Hello everybody. Sorry about the tech error if you're still with us. Clearly Windows decided it was time for an update and I really didn't get a choice in the matter. So we've lost about 30 minutes, but we're just going to go ahead and restart and run the whole process again, which means I'm going to start off with the recap of my story, but I really do appreciate any of y'all who are here and anyone who's going to be viewing this on YouTube. Thank you so much for checking in. I appreciate everything, and let me know if there's something you want me to talk about or if you have any particular comments or questions. I appreciate everything. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. Head back over into my OneNote where I keep all my stories. Make it so you can see it as well. We have the chart, and in this chart we have Act 1 of my NaNoWriMo novel, which was going to be called When in Doubt. So last week we determined that we were going to have two main perspective characters. We decided that one of them was going to be Eddie and the other was going to be Sam. Our primary protagonist is going to be Sam, and he's going to be moving through the story during present time. Eddie, on the other hand, is Sam's father, who is a character that has spent most of his life disproving magical and mystical things, or at least so we think. Really, Eddie has spent the majority of his time covering these things up for a secret government agency, which Sam is now slowly working his way into. So last week, we mapped out the beginning of both of their stories. Sam is going to be starting off in an orphanage. Eddie is going to be starting off in New York living with his sister. Sam is going to not know where his mother is and not know where his father is, but his mother is going to show up and start him along this path as she dies gruesomely by some sort of monster killing her on the front porch of the doorstep. At which point Sam's going to freak out, as someone would, and then once he finds out that this thing is going to try to kill him next, he's going to have to seek out his dad to kind of figure everything out, but his dad's missing. But he left Sam a few audio tapes or videos or notes. Haven't really clarified the specifics on that one, but Sam's going to find his estate, find those notes, and those notes are going to be the story of Eddie that we're going to write out at the same time. So we're trying to design these acts so that these two storylines kind of arc in tandem, but they feed characters to each other. And that's where our Act 2 is really going to shake things up a bit. Because in Eddie's story, we're going to be meeting these gypsy characters at the beginning. These gypsy characters are kind of what move Eddie from the realm of I'm disproving magical stuff to oh crap, there really is magical stuff, to oh crap, this magical stuff's trying to kill me. And that's what pushed him into his role with this government agency. Whereas Sam is trying to discover all this stuff, the first thing he's going to kind of run into is this cult that is trying to kill him. So we have these two sets of kind of unfleshed out characters, and what we're going to do is we're going to swap them as we go into Act 2. So with Sam, we're going to start introducing the gypsies. We're going to see these gypsies 18 years later and kind of see the change that has happened with all of them. We're going to see how these 18 years have influenced them, and we're going to find out, hey, something happened to these guys, and we know Eddie's story is going to wrap some of this in together. So unlike the normal story arc where you're going to be like setup, completion, setup, follow-up, you set up a joke, the joke works, you want to make sure that anyone has an item they need later on in the story, or you want to make sure that some sort of story arc makes sense, we get to kind of jump through time with this layout, in that something that happens to Sam is going to be the effect of something that happens to Eddie. Oh, my audio is very staticky, is what I'm getting, which is unfortunate. I don't have a whole lot of options about my audio this time. But thank you for letting me know. I'm going to see what I can do to fix the audio input for my microphone. Hello, microphone. see what I can do with that in my settings. Audio. Nope, that's the only microphone I can use right now. Yep, unfortunately it's just going to be a staticky broadcast, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm sure it's on my end. Tech is the worst, the absolute worst this week, but we're just going to push through it. We're going to discuss Act 2, and hopefully by the time I get to Act 3, I'll have some actual tech that's functioning. So 1 week to solve that one. We'll see how I do. But for now, we're just going to work with what we got. So in the very end, thank you for the information, by the way, Flaris. That's probably what you're describing is probably an internet issue on my side. And yeah, I'm just going to have to work with it. But once again, seriously, thank you for your info. I will figure it out and fix it for next week. But in the previous section, we were looking at Sam's movement into Act 1, in which case the cultists arrive at his father's estate. And that's kind of our intro to the cultist, at least the most active intro, because they're going to use magic and they're going to attack the butler, who we're going to find out is magic. And then that's going to make him go on the run. Probably is going to escape via a bus, is what I think we have. Sneaking onto a bus. Foot chase scenes are always fun. And then in that same vein, we're going to have Eddie piss off the gypsies. Put in a situation where to work with the gypsies would break his ethics of some sort. So they're trying to pull some sort of a sham. He has to call them out. And they get mad, and they're really going to try to kill him. So he comes home. He's got the dead rat, the classic knife into the door with the dead rat on it. And he knows it's not safe to be there. So he and his sister are going to have to figure stuff out. Which puts us in a very unique position of the rest of this story is not planned out. So we know what we have to do. We have to conclude the story. I do have a general idea as to what's going to happen to Eddie. We have to make sure that everything is in line, though. So we have cultists to work with. We have gypsies to work with. So we have to think reasonably about what Sam would do. So Sam is receiving this information, finishing off this story. So Sam's on a bus heading from, I think we said Chicago, which is where we're going to put him. If he wasn't, he's in Chicago. Because I like Chicago, but Eddie was in New York. So Sam's on a bus to New York. Now, on this bus to New York, we're going to get a good chunk of Eddie's story. Because he's going to have really not a whole lot to do, and it's a good chance to kind of fill in what happens to Eddie. So we know that Eddie is now scared, he's now running, and he's now powerless. But he was saved by an agent. Do we have that agent in there? I don't think we do. Darla breaks up, warning note pinned to his sister's door with a dead rat on it. So one of the major pieces of information I left out of the end of this section was that one of Eddie's sister's friends was actually an undercover officer investigating the gypsies via this friend group. And at this point, the undercover officer assists them. And I should probably write that in the correct spot. His situation ends, so there's a scuffle of some sort. This police officer, or there's actually this officer of the secret agency, which I have mapped out. Let's go take a look at this secret agency, shouldn't we? Characters. We have this agency. In fact, this will be my first time I really show you how I like to do my notes. So I have a ton of characters available. I have all of these gypsies. The Coalition of Unrest is, in fact, a small little freedom fighter group that I've thrown together to deal with the government entity, but they are not the cult and they are not the gypsies. This is a third party, fifth party sort of thing that we can bring in if we want to. But our biggest deal is the Supernatural Organisms and Artifacts Regulatory Committee, because I like the concept of SHIELD and really annoying names and acronyms. So, short, it's going to be called SOARC, which is SOARC. Add that in here. SOARC. Oh, the text was too pixelated to read when I pull up the menu. Okay, we'll have to find out a way to zoom in on that as well. But for now, we're going to be looking at this big old thing, SOARC. This is going to be where Eddie is spending most of his time. And he's going to get indoctrinated somewhat. But the general concept for this committee, I want to tie back into one of my favorite movies, which is Van Helsing, and in a very small way kind of throw back to that, because back to our story chart, in Van Helsing, in Van Helsing, whatever his group was that was hidden under the Vatican, if y'all haven't seen this, I highly recommend you go see it. It was awesome. Seemed in the movie to be primarily based around a Christian religion, primarily anyways. But if you look in the background, there's characters and people from all other faiths interacting and doing multiple different things there, and I really liked the idea that that whole society was an interfaith sort of coalition. So that's kind of what I want to do, and what has pull together what's been thrown together here, because in my belief, if all of this mystical stuff existed, the task force put together to control and prevent catastrophes within these areas would have to be interfaith, which leaves so much room for fun stuff. So what we're going to end up doing is having Eddie, who is concerned with his sister, is going to call the number on this card. We're going to assume he gives him a card because his whole investigation is busted. Eddie's one of his leads, but Eddie doesn't want to deal with it until he gets this dead rat on it. Gives him a card with a dead rat on it. He's like, Eddie decides to call the government dude. But we're going to cut right there because it's going to be almost like a TV show cut, where it's like ring, cut to black, moving into Act 2, back for Sam. So Sam is on the bus. He's decided to head to New York. It's possibly a day later. We have to remember that Sam is on limited time. He has to find his dad or some way of stopping this curse before the new moon. It is very important that he does that, or at least is in a church on the new moon, possibly. We already know that the beast was not able to come into the orphanage, which was a Christian establishment. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it doesn't. I'm not going to clarify that one too much this early. But Sam is on a bus to New York. Sam's got to find his dad. So he's looking for clues in all the wrong places. Not really. He's looking for clues in his dad's notes. But I think this is a great time to bling. It's always a good time to bling. Bring in the Coalition of the Unwilling, because Sam is interesting to multiple organizations. Coalition of the Unwilling, observing Sam. Now, what does that mean? So he's on a bus. The coalition. I should probably have chosen an easier name for this, huh? Coalition Unwilling. So the CU. Or the COTU. We're going to call it the CU. So the CU is put together of rogue wizards and rogue creatures that are not necessarily dangerous or aggressive, but are not a fan of the fact that they're getting what they feel is shoved down by the government. So we might have some sort of fun creature from mythology or stories watching him, but it need to be something that could actually exist incognito on a bus to New York. So I want it to be friendly, but I want it to be something that is creepy that would be friendly. So a creature from the CU is watching Sam on the bus, but in disguise. Disguise? It'll fix it for me. I'm a disguise. I was close. So if that's the case, Sam's going to notice a creepy dude or lady watching him as a old lady. Sam notices her watching him throughout our cuts to Eddie's story. What should she be? I don't want to do a Gorgon because that's too dangerous. I don't want to do... For now, we don't know what creature she is. Figure out the creature type later, because that'll change the interactions significantly. If she's kind of like looking for Sam as this, he's supposed to be like the savior maybe or something. He's a very influential character, but we don't know what yet. But with the way a particular creature would interact is going to completely change the dialogue and the depth and the tone of each of those scenes. So this is going to be kind of interspersed for a little bit in Act 2 as he goes to New York, because I don't know how long the drive from Chicago to New York is. We'll figure that one out. But more than likely he's not going to make it there. I think it's safe to say. Anyways, we have to move on to Eddie's story, where he now gets in contact with Soark. Eddie is now in contact with Soark. Has to do an interview. Debrief / interview, right? Because they're not just going to let him in. That would be silly. Be silly if Eddie could just get into a government agency. So they're going to have to talk about his skill set, past work on disproving magical stuff. And we're going to talk about his primary goal is to protect his sister. So we need to make sure the focus is on that. He's going to feel a little guilty that he destroyed his sister's life, because he's not a bad guy. Wants her protection, willing to do what is necessary to protect himself and family, which they'll provide him that sort of protection should he work for them. So he's gonna. Easy first scene. Easy breakdown, sort of a recap of what happened there. Next, we're going to go ahead. Another bus scene. This is the first time he really notices the lady. Notices lady looking at him. Gets creepy feeling. Possibly a rest stop where he bumps into her, gets another creepy feeling, buys stuff, as one does at the rest stop. I'm not sure how buses do, if they just go all the way through. I'll have to research that. Do buses actually stop on long distance drives? I don't know. but we'll find another way to do something there. Maybe it's a restroom break, which is even funnier. Maybe it's like a restroom break and she smells awful. And she's trying to go to the back of the bus and she just smells really weird. She goes to back of bus, smells awful. Super simple. Awesome. Ooh, maybe she's like a voodoo zombie. That'd be kind of cool if there's some sort of dude watching him or some lady who controls dead things. Maybe it's a voodoo zombie, which would be fun because then she couldn't talk. And maybe like she has, if she's a zombie, because they have to stitch their mouths closed, so she's wearing like a turtleneck that's up over her mouth. That's perfect. And like no one's sitting around her because she smells so bad. And then maybe like a really like gross person comes in and they sit next to her and that's like a joke because he didn't care. Gross person comes in and sits next to her and doesn't notice the smell. But everyone notices their combined stench. Perfect. There's your bus scene. So now we're going to talk about, we can probably jump forward a little bit with Eddie to where he is going to discuss the wonder and the magic of his first few days in Soark. The wonder of Soark. Because Eddie is going to see so much stuff that is beyond belief. He's going to see magical people working together. He's going to see creatures that shouldn't exist. It's very almost like the magical MIB kind of thing. In fact, aliens might end up playing a part in this in another book, but for now we're going to leave this magical. So Eddie enters the world of the magical MIB. Creatures, wizards, using practical magic. And a description of how magic works, because that will be important to clarify the rules so that when people start using magic later on, we really get an idea as to what's going on. Clarify rules of magic. Now, I don't think it's going to be a given thing. Magic in this world is going to rely on a significant understanding of the way the world works and is going to be based on an inherent characteristic of spirit and will. So he might be able to generate magic, but he's going to have to get trained because it's almost like a Green Lantern mixed with maybe even the necroscope sort of thing, where the more you learn, the more you know, but you have to learn how to use magic, but you also have to learn trades. So, like the concept of Eastern medicine, they understood their particular concept of the body so well, and they had this concept of medicine that they're able to affect meridians. They're able to like do the pressure point hitting. They're able to heal and do all kinds of stuff because it's almost like faith. They understand it. They have magic. This buildup of faith lets stuff happen. The religions and churches, because they're based so much on faith and that map of what they've created for the world to work, that with that understanding of magic and those maps, they're able to affect different things. And they're not able to affect the same stuff because the maps cross in some areas but are completely separate in others. So I think that creates a fun little area for different communities of people to use magic in completely different ways. So he's going to learn that. And he might learn some magic. He might be able to do a couple little things, some snappy things, but primarily since his main goal is to be able to disprove stuff, if anything, it's going to be studying all of these different forms of magic to make sure he can come up with explanations. So he studies the different forms of magic so that he can disprove them. Now, with that, we should probably talk about the first time he sees a team come back from the field. So Eddie sees a team come back from the field. Now that's a very interesting concept because he's been excited and he's going through all these different studies, but something needs to snap him back to reality of, hey, this is not safe. Like, someone needs to come in either like missing half their body or just some sort of gruesome injury. So Eddie sees a major emergency, national mystical emergency occurs that makes all of the SOARC teams have to go assist. Eddie watches the event unfold on TV and then gets to see the aftermath with his instructor. See the aftermath when the teams return. Many are severely injured, and a good friend ends up dying from his injuries. Kind of put some stakes into the game, which means I need to create a good friend, basically. Someone needs to be introduced during the Wonder of SOARC that dies, or possibly even earlier. Probably what would be great is if it's the guy that recruited him. So I'm going to go ahead and say guy that recruited him, because that's going to be more impactful. I hate setups that happen too soon because you can almost feel it. Excuse me. You can almost feel a character that has been put in to die. Like, you got your red shirts from Star Trek kind of going, and they're like, oh, he's dead. Look, it's Kirk, it's Spock, and then somebody. I don't want to have that vibe. I want people to have enough of an arc to carry some weight if they die. So in general, I'm going to be looking for that at every turn to make sure I'm not putting someone in who's just a bullet dummy. So he's going to deal with that, and we have two Eddie sections together that I think really kind of balance each other out. The good and the bad of SOARC. And then we have Sam, who is getting stalked by the mystical CU member, by the zombie. Sam needs to notice something now. Like, he noticed the smell. Could have just been a stinky old lady, but we can't do that. Sam needs to notice something that's going to give away the fact that this is a zombie, and this is... I guess he may or may not know what a zombie is. We're talking about a kid, 18 or so, maybe a couple years ago. Zombies have been around. He's going to have read the zombie survival guide, so he's going to be hip to this sort of thing. So, mystical CU member, so stalked by the zombie. He figures it out and tries to run. So we got this poor kid who's got some sort of crazy gypsy curse, some sort of cult after him, and now he's got a zombie following him around. So he's having the worst birthday month ever. So we're really not giving him a whole bunch of happy, which I'm actually a little bit nervous about. Looks like we just hit our 9:30 mark. Thank you, Flaris. We are going to continue. I'm not sure we're going to finish Act 2. Well, we got a few steps away, but this isn't even getting close to providing me the arc that I want. So we'll see kind of what ends up happening with this. So a couple of these are multiple scenes, but we're going to kind of just tie it back in. We're going to push and at least fill out 1, 2, 3, 4 more of these chunks, and then if it doesn't feel like Act 2 is over, we'll just add some more in, and we'll do that part next week. But we're going to get these 4 chunks knocked out today. So Sam has been stalked by the zombie. He figures it out, and he tries to run. So at some point, this bus has to stop, or Sam has to make it stop. Now, I would prefer Sam takes agency here, so he can solve the problem somehow. So what can someone do to make a bus stop? He's going to have to wait till he's in a city. Sam notices something about the old lady that clues him into it being a zombie, and he figures out that it's malicious, or assumes it is. So that has to be step one, is we're going to have multiple clues for Sam that let him know that this zombie is not a friendly zombie. I mean, it might be dressed all nice and stuff, but it may not be here to kill him, but it's not here to help him. So it's here to get him. So Sam is not having any of that. He's not really gotten to rest. And he needs to find a way to get off of the bus. I don't want to pull a speed. I feel like we've had enough intense here. So this needs to be a social manipulation kind of thing. So we need to get Sam to show some ingenuity with people. So Sam's going to social engineer his way out of this, which means we're going to have to clarify somewhere earlier on that Sam has this skill, because we don't want to have a surprise skill somewhere. At least have him be able to talk well when he's in the orphanage. So clarify that he's a fast thinker and talker, because that's the only time it's really safe to do that. So how does one social engineer themselves off of a bus? I'm not really sure, actually. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have to think about it for a little bit. I feel like this could be a really fun scene where basically he's going to have to either make everybody panic because of the zombie, which is not very difficult to do, but I don't think people would believe it. So we're not really sure what we're going to do with that one. But he's going to get out somehow, but he's got to lose something. It can't be that easy. Loses something. Possibly part of his dad's stuff. Because that would be great, because then we could like skip ahead in the story and like have a crucial plot point in the middle of those notes that we have to get. Ooh, this could be so much fun. So Eddie's story might jump ahead maybe a month or so and have it start off like very clearly, have like a reference to something that we didn't get to read. I think that could be very fun. Or the zombie takes it, because the zombie takes it would be best. Which would be hard to do if it's a laptop, so these might have to be written out in notes, which is even more fun. So like that happens, the zombie reaches and grabs at him and ends up catching one of the notes or one of the pages and rips it out. And Sam's like, no! But then he has to run because of the crowd of people running from the zombie. It's too good. His own ingenuity screws him over. So Sam gets out. Everyone's evacuating the bus in some sort of city between Chicago and New York. In some city between Chicago and New York. And we need to do some stuff in this city. So we're going to have another Sam section. Because he's got to figure something out. He can't just get on another bus. He's going to be freaking out because people are following him. And he needs to rest. We've not given this guy a break. We need to give him a chance to process this and show a little bit of character. We do. We need to make this happen. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do here. So, interesting. It looks like my brain has dried up for this session. So I do believe, despite the fact that I wanted to get 3 more sections in, we're going to leave it here with Sam in the city. If you have ideas leave them in the comments, please, or email me, because this is crowdfunded. We already did, or not crowdfunded, but crowdsourced. We already gave the butler a blasted hand thanks to the comments. So if you want to log on, shoot me a tweet. If you want to send me an email, leave a comment. Any of these things and all of these things will be taken into consideration, and we're going to have ourselves a great novel come the end of November. So I want to thank you all very much for hopping on to see me. I'm going to shift back over so you can see my face just a little bit better, and thank you all once again. Seriously, I really appreciate y'all watching. It makes this so much more fun knowing that there's people who are actually interested in this. I can't wait to stream the actual writing of the novel, which is going to be an entirely different beast in itself. But so far, this has been super fun. I love writing. I love talking to y'all. If you have questions, please hit me up. porridgeandbiscuits@gmail.com. Porridge Biscuit on Snapchat, Porridge Biscuit on Instagram, and Porridge and Biscuits on Twitter. So please, any of those, hit me up anytime. Leave comments, leave ideas. We'll work together. It'll be amazing. Thank you all so much, and I will see you next week.